Thanks for attending this mini lecture on genre and trope, function and purpose, utilizing John Ford's My Darling Clementine as background. Naturally, there will be spoilers in this essay, so if you want, stop this video now and watch the feature film first. In this visual essay, I will argue that John Ford's My Darling Clementine is an excellent example of the Western genre because it satisfies the functions of genre. The function and utility of a genre is to help our society in some way. This is how we can still attribute value to a film from a different time period, by analyzing the film from the time period from which it comes. For the purposes of this class, I have simplified the function of genre to these three tenets. These three tenets are that genre helps us identify a problem. It helps us realize the problem, and helps us solve the problem. Identify, realize, and solve. As we move forward in this class, we will look at these films as a response to different societal problems. After all, genre films wouldn't be needed if life were not filled with problems. Pretty much every film, including genre films, are made to address societal issues that a given filmmaker decides is important to discuss. And the recurring nature of genre suggests that maybe over time problems are consistent. In other words, one could argue that genre films address similar problems over time because society today is plagued by similar problems as in our past. Dubbed by Thomas Schatz as the most classical of the westerns, and Lester Friedman as a template of the director's cinematic style, Clementine is Ford's tale of internal pain and longing, an imprint of his experiences serving in the Navy in World War II. He utilizes its visual style to a narrative effect, and takes liberties in a deliberate way such that we identify his work as one of style and not oversight. His character is profound. The camera, focusing on the emotional development between characters here, is similar to Wellman's Oxbow incident, which reflects on tragedy, personal strife, and inner character conflict, rather than mincing details to support a historical nostalgia. In fact, My Darling Clementine is not even close to being historically accurate, even by the standards of popular entertainment. Monument Valley is nowhere near Tombstone, Arizona, and the titular character, Clementine, did not exist in real life. John Ford manipulates the time period and the environment to serve some stylistic purpose. In my last lecture, we meditated on the idea of genre being either thematic or iconic. While they are different in nature, they both rely on a type of narrative shorthand, and that form of shorthand is called trope. All genre films rely on them because they essentially define the category. These visual and story components are defined as an agreed-upon narrative, an archetypal reading of a story or situation according to the simplest and most widely held beliefs of a given culture. In other words, tropes are basically linguistic stereotypes. They are single, identifiable elements to a narrative that carry a lot of subtext, loaded messages, if you will. These story stereotypes are recurring events and motifs that we expect to see in genre films. They communicate to the viewer so much more about gravity, intensity, and subtext than what a surface-level analysis might suggest. Westerns are so iconic, in fact, that the music will play a big part in the sonic landscape of a Western film. Even when we hear these two notes, for example, we can't help but find ourselves thinking about the Western genre, even if you are not aware of what movie that music actually comes from. It's still identifiable as a trope of the Western. You may need to enlarge your screen here, but this still is a list of some tropes that occur in Western films, as well as tropes in other genres. What other tropes can you think of that aren't listed here? Now that we've talked about trope, we can talk about how tropes are manipulated as a vehicle to story. One of the fun things about tropes is that they codify and simplify difficult concepts so that we understand them quickly as a movie plays. At the time this movie came out, the tropes of westerns had already been utilized by other filmmakers for about 40 or more years. So here, he knows which tools he's going to use. What's fun is seeing how he plays with these tropes in a creative way. Clementine is a lush visual exercise in contrast. And Ford uses these opposites, good versus evil, civilized versus uncivilized, masculine versus feminine, to paint a picture, to make a point. The historical background that Ford touches on is the now legendary feud between the Earps and the Clanton gang at the old Kindersley Corral, which works beautifully as a poetic statement about man and violence. Even though the gunfight is such an important event in this film, the title of the movie suggests that the film carries more of a symbolic quality than a literal one. On the side of the good guys, Henry Fonda's Wyatt Earp and Victor Mature's Doc Holliday serve as foils to one another. Wyatt Earp is a straight arrow, reserved in manner and an everyman. He's almost an unlikely Western hero here. Doc Holliday, by contrast, is a self-hating, troubled genius. He is a doctor, and he can quote Shakespeare. His tough guy exterior is balanced with his true-to-life illness, as Henry Fonda's character discovers his purpose in Tombstone. Victor Mature's Doc Holliday goes to Tombstone to die. The two featured women are also interesting foils in their own right. Linda Darnell's Chihuahua figure represents the Old West, the physical manifestation of two cultures combined, whose life and livelihood is endangered by environmental and human factors, both natural and violent. She ultimately suffers a demise that parallels Doc Holliday's. Kathy Downs, who plays Clementine, brings order to a lawless and chaotic world. Like a cowboy herself, she travels from one cow camp to another, from one mining town to another, and as stated by the men, she shows them that life is abundant with wonderful things. One woman represents the old Tombstone, and the other one represents the new. There is a pervasive subtext in the interplay between refinement and savagery, not depicted as a conflict between cowboys and Indians, but instead brilliantly illustrated in the interplay between the new faces of law and order, Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday, and the brutish ruffians who create violent disorder and can't appreciate Shakespeare. Casting-wise, there is a cultural contrast here as well, as Victor Mature was, up until this film, a regular fixture in the musical and comedy world, as well as Walter Brennan, who plays against type in this film as a chilling villain. Brennan was known for many years in Hollywood as a reliable character actor who always provided a good dose of comic relief. This film is exceptional because it is very clear where Ford stands on history and what his beliefs are. The tools that he uses to underscore his point of view are clear. So now we arrive at purpose. What then is the purpose of genre? Remember these points that were presented on the earlier slide? Genre purpose is tied directly to our need for answers to life's most difficult questions. Why do we watch these works of fantasy knowing that they rely on your suspension of disbelief? Why do we care about these stories even if they are indeed a departure from reality? We care because the purpose of genre isn't to be historically accurate or to reflect reality at all. I would argue that genre films are successful because we wish to escape reality, maybe to see or remember something better than it happened or occurred in real life. No answer to the genre question is 100% applicable in every situation and to every person. But if you ever catch yourself wandering in a genre film, ask yourself these questions. What is the purpose of this film? What is the director trying to say with these genre tropes? We don't watch science fiction films to learn how to be an astronaut. There's something greater to be learned. Likewise, we don't want our romantic comedies to exactly reflect our own poor life choices. We watch them to experience something perhaps better than what we know in our own life story. By the same token, we do not watch westerns to learn how to properly ride a horse. They aren't about providing a blueprint or depicting history. They are folklore, romanticism, and perhaps therapy. Many people might assert that all of these films are the same. But maybe as you look closer, you will find that each Western we study as a part of this class will have its own idiosyncrasies, contrasts, and usage of trope. Maybe each of the films addresses a different societal problem. Thanks for viewing.